Thanks for listening to the Extreme podcast. This show is sponsored by the Raqib-Taskforce. For more information, go on www.Raqib-Taskforce.com. Peace. I'm your co-host, Abubakr Mahmoud. You're listening to the Extreme podcast.
And I'm your co-host, Matuse. Peace. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 7. Who would have thought we made it this far, but we don't stop because we can't stop. We're on that Diddy flow.
It's been a good part, alhamdulillah. We're doing all right.
Awesome. Definitely. We have a special guest with us today. Bakri, I'm gonna let you introduce him.
Well, from what I understand with the nature of the Extreme podcast is that we like to do introductions, but we're not very good at them.
No, we never are good at introductions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the best way to introduce somebody is have them introduce themselves.
That is true.
Shalom Aleichem. I'm John Safran, and I'm an author. Just had a book out. Depends what you mean by extremist. Going rogue with Australian deplorables. Done lots of docos too. And that's me.
Well,
John Safran.
John Safran in the house.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on episode 7 of the Extreme
Thank you for
podcast.
blessing us with another episode, and we're here on Sundays where people usually sleep in, and we're doing our thing. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, before we started, I stopped you guys from having a conversation. I want to get straight to that just because.
Oh, yeah, true. Wait, what was that headline?
You read something, Buckley, about...
The Abalone driver said, we should fear the sun more than sharks.
Fear the sun more than sharks. As in the water?
We should be worried about, I think, what the sun can do to us more than what sharks can do to us, which makes completely sense because, especially in Australia where there are a lot of white people and the sun is very, very harsh.
Very harsh.
There's high probably cases of skin cancer, one of the highest rates in the world.
Actually one in
people are dying unless you get proper you can there are things you can do. Cancer rates are actually declining in the first world. So it's because now we know how we can do to avoid cancer and what treatments we can get to treat cancer, like surgery and chemo and all these things that actually, it's interesting. We were talking to a friend of ours a few episodes back and they were talking about their experience with chemo and how it completely hospitalized them. And then Sister Elizabeth, shout out. And then you guys were talking about how she went on this kind of I won't call it a diet, but just to change how she lived her life.
Yeah, she changed what she ate and how she.
And I guess comes to such a contrast to other friends I know who have just done it not I won't say mainstream, but the popular the invested way, and it worked out completely for them. They got all the treatment, they went for all the chemo and all those things, and they had a pretty serious brain cancer, and they survived, and then I finished their last session of chemo, and I'm man, blessings, not many people can survive something like that.
Yeah, of course, because it's traumatic for the body.
Yeah. But it's,
as you can possibly tell by my pastiness, I've spent very little time by the beach growing up. So little time that I'm just not scared of sharks. Because they just seem so foreign and other to me, something that just would never happen. In the same way, I don't fear, the Great Wall of China falling on me.
Right.
Or aliens or something. It's I don't fear sharks because I'm just
You're never in the water?
Yes.
So why? So you're never in the water because of the sun?
Well, I think it's a chicken and egg thing where I was quite pasty when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I didn't like to go down to the beach, and because I didn't go down to the beach, I remained pasty. Also, when I grew up, there was a lot more stigma. I grew up when it was really cool to have a suntan.
Right.
If you were, you were a nerd if you had pasty skin.
Wow.
Whilst that sort of adapted, it was around. I actually remember when it changed.
Cancer was at its highest at that point. I'm telling you, because everyone was running out there getting their tan on. Yeah.
And then Train Spotting, that movie came out.
Right.
And that was it had cool pasty people, and then it was overnight. It was really good news for me.
Wow, the movie that changed
that pastiness sort of came in.
You had spokespeople now for the coolness of pasty people.
Yeah.
That is interesting, but this country does have a very high cancer rate because the majority of people that are here are not meant to be here, is in their they don't have, their body hasn't like evolved to where they can take on the heat of the sun, especially now that there's a hole in the ozone layer. It's
No
like,
one's true.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like
That's
a real struggle. You're gonna get higher rates, especially if there's a culture that's saying be out in the sun and get a tan. If you don't have melanin in your skin tone, it's gonna burn. You know, like that's just science, I guess. Which is crazy, man. So you survived an era where people were making a lot of errors. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. See,
I even tried when I was like 15 or something. I tried like fake tan and going to a solarium to kind of fit it. It's quite embarrassing. You know, you get away with that if you're a girl, and I guess.
How was that for you?
Well, like, no, it was kind of embarrassing because everyone can tell and they didn't want to say anything. But yeah.
And it was like a carrot.
Yeah, because you had to, as a guy back then, maybe it's different now, but not only did you have to look good, but you had to look like you hadn't put any effort into looking good, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Yeah, I guess it was like at any point in history, there's always a pressure to kind of fit in, more or less, or be accepted.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's always evolving.
It's always evolving. It's never easy at any point, really. And it's like, if you can create a culture or create an aspiration to a certain culture, to like create that kind of relationship where like, oh, if I, am perceived naturally to be this, then that's what I just got to be. Mm-hmm. It's like, but I'm not naturally that because that's a construct. That's not anything natural. So you got to like kind of, unfortunately at that age, no one ever kind of stops and listens to you and like, look, all these things don't actually mean anything. They're not reality. They're constructs. They're things that we teach each other and we tell each other. They're not things that are pure in who you are. You kind of can step back and evaluate that. And if you learn that at your youth, you don't just do things to try to be accepted and appreciated. You just like think, I don't need to. I can find it's in me. There are things in me that I need to appreciate and love. And there are things about me that people can appreciate and love. Yeah. And that's what you kind of go with. You know what I mean? And that's how you kind of, that's such a... But so many people don't learn that because that's not how school works.
No, you don't get taught that. I mean, it's not part of a curriculum. You just hope that somebody drops that knowledge on you. But the other part of it is that you'd have to accept it. Yeah. And at that age, it's very difficult to accept being yourself. So for you, John, was it like, no, I mean, just in that experience, because like when I was growing up, people always called me weird. And I took it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
I really did. No. It just meant I was myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you. Like, yeah. Oh, you live in a weird world in your head. And I'm like, at least my world is awesome. Yeah. Like if I am in my head, at least my head's great. Like,
yeah, at least I get to like explore something there. I'm not caught up in what's around me.
So, but it isn't as easy. So like for your experience, being the pasty boy in a world of tan, was it a defiant thing, or was it just like, was it always just like there's nothing I can do about it?
Yeah, there was a bit of that. It did. I'm trying to think. Did it overwhelm? It didn't like overwhelm me at the expense of everything else in my life, and I was quite confident about lots of other things. Not that I really thought about it that hard about being confident. It's more like in retrospect, looking back at it.
Yeah, of course.
I think one of the problems I had is I wasn't beaten enough up in primary school, or maybe that was not the problem. But I was like weird in primary school in that people were really into sports, and I was into going off and like trying to write stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I did that.
Except I was totally accepted. Like I wasn't.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I like
it's hard to get accepted for writing in primary school.
Yeah.
Everyone was kind of into it.
Yeah.
Although the weird thing is my sister, who was 2 years above me in the primary, she was brutally bullied. And I reckon subconsciously I sort of, because you're so young, so you don't really, you're not like overthinking everything. Yeah. I was trying to figure out a way that you kind of smuggle your way through life and sort of like not get beaten up. So I was sort of, just looking at my sister and kind of figuring out what kind of defenses will I have to kind of avoid this.
Right. You took her example and you like you did what not to do.
Yes.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Wow.
That would be
like as a kid learning that, like, like just being conscious of that to survive. Survival, man, that's what it is. It's just survival. Like as a teenager, like at school, like so it's all survival. I went to so many different schools, man, and it was all survival.
Primary school was great for us. I think if you went to my primary school, I was talking to a friend about this the other day. If you'd made it to year 6, you'd like had witnessed or like heard of like or come across with the idea of like murder, suicide, like sexual assault,
right,
and all these things. Just like having gone to this primary school, because this was Liverpool in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
So that all happened at your school by grade 6?
Yeah, pretty much in and around the school. Some stuff happened in the parking lots outside, where there was like a body found chopped up. And then some stuff, yeah. It was like, what? And then, all these other things happened. That was probably just one of the worst ones. But these were, some things were like more
they shape
we
how
knew
you see
happened.
the
Like
world.
some things were facts,
Yeah.
some things might have been rumors.
Yeah.
But
The fact that you're aware of that stuff
yeah,
at that age.
yeah, the fact that we're thinking about it, you know what I mean? We're thinking about the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's very, it's cool. But I don't know. I think anyone that kind of like from that primary school, I felt if any of the one who went to those primary school, the high schools, managed to get into like some kind of training or education, something they were really into, like they could do wonders. Because like once you like, it's just like you're so used to, especially in a capitalist society, so much where you gotta like climb your way and make your way and figure out and be creative. If you're like bombarded with so much pressures at such a young age and having to like really like step out of your own element to kind of think about what the fuck's going on, like it would really give you a confidence when you finally do get the opportunities to be like, all right, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And as opposed to, being someone who then went to a private school and was in a private institution for like 6 years, like I realized that I was missing out on so much of that. Like I was getting like, decent education and stuff, but like it wasn't, those character building traits. I like missed out on so much. I just like hated my surroundings as around all these dickheads. And for like I got expelled out of one, went to another private school, which was like less bad, but I was like, oh, anyway, got to this uni thing and then fucked up for the most part because I hadn't built all these character developing life skills of survival. Yeah. I just been like, like given, I guess, all these
theory.
things. Yeah,
there was no practical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't want to be out there. It's just like I was like trapped and I like, and that's never healthy to feel kind of like limited in your movement. Yeah. And that's why I guess when you do get that movement, you kind of don't know which way to go. You just go all directions at once.
It's about the middle ground.
Yeah, middle ground. Then you go and you find your path and all these things. But it's interesting how like we kind of.
I went to just a regular state primary school, then year 7, just a local high school. But then I mucked around too much and didn't do my work and got really bad grades. So my parents sent me to this strict Jewish school, like religious Jewish school, and it was single sex. And I really feel like I got a lot of good material out of going to this like Hasidic Jewish school. Like they had like the side locks and the skull caps and everything, but I felt, the balancing is so lots of good.
You had the.
No, well, I didn't have. You weren't allowed to get
the side shaven.
Yeah, shaven. Yeah. Like you had to have it below the cheekbone, but I didn't have the real long ones. But it was just like the school thing was you had to have it cut below the cheekbone.
Right, they allowed it to just be cut below the cheekbone.
Yeah.
So the idea is that it has to just grow like where the ear begins.
Yeah, I think so. I think like all these religious things, it's like this murky thing between, well, what's in the scripture and what's cultural.
Right, okay.
So, I think the growing it longer might be cultural, I don't know, or whatever. And we have to wear like the tzitzits, which are like those things underneath like those fiddler on the roof things that hang out of your shirt or whatever. But so it was really good. So I got lots of good shtick that I could then put in my work. But I do feel like I'm slightly, it would have been handy to have been in a school where there were women too, or girls back at that stage. Yeah. Like I would have learnt more and not been so socially weird.
That is interesting, because like I don't know. I just think about I went to a school that was all boys. I went to a Catholic school. And I wasn't Catholic, and I was at an all boys school. But because of my I guess my life outside of school, I always had interactions with women, and especially I was hanging out with people who were way older than me because I looked older. No one ever really questioned my age until it was till they were real close with me, and by then it's like, oh well, we know you. So I was hanging around with 25, 30-year-olds, and I was 15, and so I was seeing the world through their eyes. So I became very Like you start seeing things very early on, but you're not seeing it from the way you would see it if you were 21, with naive eyes. Like you're seeing it through people who, like they've seen enough of it. You know what I mean? So it's just like I feel like I skipped that step in some ways than others. So it's interesting because everything you go through is gonna shape and mold you. So you go into a Hasidic Jewish school, is gonna shape like a worldview or even the stimulus of what you can take from, right? And then. But if you were in another, but that means you miss out on other stuff that perhaps you never got. But if you were there, you would never have got that. Like, it's just weird. It's like you can't have all of it. But what you do, what does influence you, what you use it for is interesting. So you're saying that you use it for a lot of your material.
Yeah.
In what way? Like landscapes or even characters? Like, what does it mean for you? Like,
So just, I guess it's that... always being a bit of an outsider. So even in that, because my family wasn't that religious, I was like the least religious kid at the most religious school in Australia.
So they sent you there for discipline reasons.
Yeah, a bit like if you're... I think they thought it's like nuns beating you over the over the knuckles with a ruler or whatever. But it didn't really end up that way because the school was actually quite liberal in a way because lots of the teachers were... these like missionary rabbis from New York. So they were kind of like loudmouth New Yorkers and like there was a whole like, you just were allowed to be a loudmouth in my school and like, rah, 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 and you didn't get in trouble for being a smart aleck. And so good material, but it wasn't very strict, even though like to the outside world
it seemed like it was.
Yeah, it seemed like just because of the costumes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So a lot of the teachers were from New York.
Yeah, like because it was a missionary school where like Jews have missionaries, religious Jews, but it's only to try to make less religious Jews more religious,
right?
As opposed to trying to get other people to convert.
So it's
because Judaism doesn't really what's the word?
Proselytize.
That's the word. Yeah. It's not really a fake but I understand inwardly it's like trying to bring those who are already more in. Yeah.
So this group in New York called the Lubavitchers, they just sent out, tried to set up like schools and communities all over the world, and one was in Melbourne, and so I just ended up, at the Sidelock school.
Have you ever been to New York? Have you ever seen the Hasidic community?
Yeah. I went there in year 9 when.
Oh right.
There was this guy called the Rebbe, and who was like the Pope or something of this little community.
Yeah.
A cult. And then this little community. And so I got to meet him, and he didn't have any children because the Rebbe was passed on through lineage or whatever. So when a Rebbe died, it was replaced with the male lineage. But his wife couldn't have children. So when he died, there was no Rebbe. And the way that people rationalized it in the community, not all of them, was that this dude's the Messiah and he's going to come back as the...
Really?
Yeah, because God made his wife not be able to have children because they wouldn't need to have children because this Rebbe was...
going to come back.
As the Messiah. So and that was the point in which it kind of gear shifted into a more problematic... Or to some people, a cult.
Did that happen during your time at the school? So you were there before?
Yeah, I was there before.
So you saw the transition?
Yeah, I was there before where he was just a leader. And I think I kind of spoke to the teachers about it, and they were like, oh, no, he's just a leader. And then it became, if he's got all the qualities of the Messiah that it's outlined in the Torah, but he's not, or whatever, or we don't know. But then once he died... And I think I'd left the school by then. That's when it kind of gear shifted into this, he's going to come back. And not all of the community. So it created a schism or whatever. But I had this one dude in my class, and he was really into it. And then there was a point where a day was decided he was going to come back as the Messiah. This was after he died, and he got.
What did they base the day on?
I don't know, but you know how like these groups just come up with these things.
Yeah, but I'm always interested in what you know.
It would have been some numerology thing or something. And so he got a plane to New York, and he's waiting for the Messiah to come, and then it didn't happen. And then he got the plane on the way back, and he just had this meltdown, and on the plane, he went or whatever, and they had to land the plane, and then his parents had to come over to America and fly him back. So yeah, it kind of sent one of the classmates crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure he had like a "my whole world is alive" like moment. Wow.
But the other weird, the thing I was always suspicious of at school was there was a lot of. We were always allowed to like make fun of religion, even though it was a real religious school. Like, or not make fun, but kind of be really provocative. Like these religious teachers just didn't care. It was like it was normal. So, if, for instance, if we were being smart Alex and going, can God create a rock so heavy he can't lift it? And just trying to like nudge the teacher. They all loved that kind of questioning. But when it came to the Rebbe, that's when suddenly you had to be serious and you weren't allowed to make fun of it. And I always thought, that's a bit suspicious. Like,
what can you give me a bit more context exactly on what like you mean by the Rebbe?
Oh, the Rebbe. So the Rebbe is just sort of like, I guess that's just a version of like the word rabbi.
Yeah.
And he was the leader of a particular community. And he was from a lineage of Rebbe. So I think the community, it would have started in Eastern Europe at some point. Because that's why they've got the furry hats and the big furry coats.
Hasidic.
So it would have been, I don't know exactly where in Europe. It could have been, whatever, somewhere in the former Soviet Union or Hungary. But there's different Hasidic communities all over Eastern Europe. And so they'd have the leader in the community, which so it'd be like a version almost of like a pope in their little mini community. And then each time that this pope died, he'd be replaced by one of his male children, and he'd become the new leader.
So it was like a lineage-based thing completely.
Right. There was no vote.
Yeah, there's no shooter. Yeah,
you couldn't text in your
vote.
I guess it would be interesting how that would be, I don't want to say controversial, but like even spanning across religions when it comes to like a leader figure based on something like lineage, that would be like, like you really have to maintain to an extent the rules surrounding that decision. Like you all have to believe that it works like this. If you doubt that it works like this, then you doubt that this is the person for it. You know what I mean? Essentially, like that's one thing that leads to another. So you have to maintain that kind of like, no, like when we talk about this, we gotta like stick to the facts. There's no joking around.
Yeah.
Like more so than when you're talking about God, which is weird. So also you say, and I definitely can understand that to an extent, because isn't that interesting? Don't you find that like, there is the debate around like theology in general, but when you look at the context and the situation in current communities, it's more about not, I won't say political, but human orientated things, and it is about like the existence of God or not. We're not so much having these grand wars over whether God exists or not. It's more like whether this kind of it's more complicated, the sect even. Like even if you come down to like regular to peaceful communities, it comes down to particular family or group or author, things like that. And
I think human beings have an innate essence of tribalizing or connecting. And when you connect with a certain group of people on something, if you connect strong enough on it, then whether you see yourself as one titled group, other people will begin to see you as a titled group. Usually titles that people or groups have over time is a title others have given them, instead of them giving themselves, because that's how we love to identify everything. This has to be something, so we give everything a name and therefore like a position, and that sticks. It's so interesting. So when it sticks, then those people begin to themselves identify as that. You know what I mean? And so I think it's natural though. Like I don't think it becomes a negative when it becomes
what's natural, what's not natural.
Well, I mean, if it happens throughout history constantly, even when it's said not to happen, like even when a group of people are told not to do it and they still do it, it's because when it works is when you have schools of thought. If the overarching idea of God is the reason, it's not debated within people who have their theology, because they all agree into that sense. But then when you're talking about the schisms of things, it's like, well, that's the lower level where there is a sense of debate. There are schools of thought. And when you have a school of thought, the idea of it being a school of thought is that it could be right, but he recognizes that you could also be right. There's space for it because there's evidence for it and there's something to back it. As long as you come from a place of evidence, then who is to say that that evidence doesn't come to that conclusion, even though I didn't come to that conclusion with my evidence. But when it becomes sectarian, is like when it's like, no, this is the only way. And if you don't follow this particular way of seeing it, you're dead to me. You know what I mean? Like it's like that extreme form of division.
The other tension I found was that there was such a big deal made out of you're not allowed to have any false idols, and the Jews used to show off about it a bit, like, oh, we don't need, Jesus, or, like we don't, we just believe in God or whatever, and there's all those stories in the Torah about, I forget who is it, Abraham who smashes the idols, I don't know,
Abraham,
whatever. Yeah. And then it was like, but then we've got this picture of this Rebbe up in every classroom, and it's like this real tense thing that we're not allowed to.
It becomes the idol.
So maybe we just need totems or something like that.
Yeah. And how long were you at that school for?
Oh, from like year 7 to year 12.
Right, so it shaped and you got to go to New York with the school?
Yeah, with a school group and you meet the Rebbe, and he gives you a piece of honey cake, and it's meant to be very holy because he's given it to you. So I took it back home, and then I kept it in the fridge at my grandma's house. Nice. Then she just threw it out one time.
Oh, damn.
Yes, but it's really, if I talk to like Orthodox Jews and I tell them, I met the Rebbe and he gave me a piece of honey cake, it's almost like this, like I've got one of those, like a medal or something. Like people are pretty impressed that I've been touched with the magic pixie dust.
Do you tell them the following story? Like, I didn't eat it.
The Rebbe in particular, how big would be
how fat was he?
No. I mean, how big was the group of people that the community, I guess, that followed? Because you were saying there are different Hasidic groups, right?
Yes.
And every Hasidic group would have a Rebbe.
Yeah.
Yeah. How big would one Hasidic? Would it be a country? Would it be a couple? Like,
well, there's only it wouldn't have been that many because there's like only 14 million Jews in the whole world, and we're just such loudmouths that we give the impression that there's way more of us or whatever. So the Lubavitch community, that was the name of this Hasidic community. I really don't know the numbers, but because there was such a they'd go out there to try to convert irreligious Jews to become more religious. They're very public and they're really out there and they're happy to hit the streets. Like where I live in Melbourne, they'll do things like on Sukkot, this festival where you have to shake this leaf and this etrog, this like lemon-like thing. Like they'll go out on the street and try to get irreligious Jews to shake it and stuff. So, but I kind of like it. It adds a bit of, it adds colour. Good extras to have in your life.
No, of course. I mean, it's when people do stuff like that, it's out of the sincerity of their heart. They you know what I'm saying. So it's of course it's good that they're reaching out within their community. I think that's a wonderful thing to see because it's a positive thing. You know what I mean, one way or another. Even though I guess it could be some people could see things like that as a nuisance. I don't know, maybe not because if it's from your own belief, you wouldn't ever see it that way. But if a Jehovah's Witness knocks at your door, I always find it interesting how people feel about Jehovah's Witness. I use them as an example because they're very much out there. Knock at your door, and do you have a conversation with them? Like, I love talking to them, man. If I got the time, man, let's have a talk. What is this? Is it Bible? All right, let's talk about the Bible. I find it interesting. Why not? But I know a lot of people don't. Have you ever had Jehovah's Witness?
I'm the same. I love all these things that most people don't like. I really love. Like if I meet a Scientologist or something, I want to know more. I'm the one who's talking so much, and when you know so much, you're the ones who are backing away.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I once, and this was years and years and years ago. I went to do a sound check, and then I had hours to kill before I had to perform, and so we're just hanging around in the city, and this guy comes up to us and he's like, "Would you like to know how your brain works?" And he looked like this little short old man, and he had these pamphlets and it said Scientology on it. And back then I'd never even heard of it. So this was before the Tom Cruise kind of thing. And I'm like, how our brain works. And there's 3 of us. So I felt kind of comfortable enough to he's like, yes, come. We're just in the alleyway. We have our place there. I'm in the alleyway. And I'm like, man, this guy's probably going to take us to do experiments on it. Yes, what is this Scientology, right? It's just like, no, come and, we'll explain these things. So we went there, and it's actually quite nice. So they have design, obviously. And they take you into this room, and they sit you down, and they put this video on. Have you ever seen The Simpsons?
The one where they show them the new Chance Catchy episodes, and like, what do you think? The glass screen?
So, like, they put you in this room, and it's just us three in this room, but there's enough seats for a lot of other people. And they show this video about Scientology and what he believes, and like the stuff I'm agreeing with. I'm like, but I knew that already from like the Quran. So like, you're not saying anything new. Yeah. And then and then what? But they don't show you everything, right? And so as it's going, I'm kind of like, I'm good, man. Like this is, so I got to get up, and my friend's like, nah, like he's really ultra polite. Like, you're right. Now this guy's an ex gangbanger, right? Like from Chicago, who has been shot, and like he's had a lot of, but for some reason in his social, like he's the kind of person who he'll go to the supermarket and he won't buy the big toilet paper, like the big bags, because like he doesn't want to seem like he shits a lot, he's buying it, like he'll get the smaller ones. So like that's his mind state. So like he's like, nah, man, let's just wait till the end. I'm like, why are we waiting? Like you don't believe this? He's like, yeah. So like I forced us to leave, and as we leave, they stop us, like, why are you leaving? Don't you want to finish it? Like, nah, we're good. This and that. Do you want to have more conversations about it? Nah, we're kind of good. And then one of the workers there, she was this Puerto Rican girl, and he's part Puerto Rican. She starts speaking to him, and they start speaking Spanish, and then like now he feels obligated to like interact with her. And then he comes to me. He's like, "Hey, bro, do you have $15?" I'm like, "What do you need $15 for?" He's like, "Man, I don't know. Cash on me, man. She wants to sell me a book." I'm like, "Why you want to buy this book?" He's like, "I just don't want to be rude." I'm like, "Bro, you don't need to buy a book for $15 and not be rude. Just say no, thank you." So funny, man. They were really trying to press him. I think he ended up buying that book.
And when I was younger and there was no internet, that finding out that there were all these like secretive little pockets in my hometown was like so amazing. So when I found out, I think it was through my dad would always be telling me, he goes, in Burke Street, if you go around that corner there, that's where the Church of Scientology is. And I hadn't heard of wow. He goes, and you'd see the people handing out the free personality tests, and it's like one time I'm just like biting the bullet and go, I'm going to do it. And then you go in there and it's like so exciting, and write down a fake name, and sit there and watch this weird documentary. That's like a decade or two out of date. Like they've just got the 1960s hair or something, and they're like a family at a table, and
that's the one.
Yeah, it was wild. And then like running out of there, and you're on such a high. It's like, oh, I wrote down that my name was Henry Rollins. Oh God, and it was pretty exciting. We had, before the internet, if you were into like secrets,
you wanted to see it yourself.
You had to put in a lot more sweat. You had to put in a lot more work to find out secrets.
Yeah. Cool. So shall we? Okay, we usually have a break, but I don't think we have time for a break because we're just going live. Shall we think again back about what's been happening to the week?
Yeah, let's do it. Of course. I mean, what has been happening in the world? Let's see.
What's been going down. I mean, there was sports things. Are any of us remotely into sports?
Okay, all I know is that yesterday.
Tonga kicked some ass. I remember
Tonga
that.
must have won. I didn't know. I plead.
I didn't even know.
Naivety.
I didn't check the score. Where's the?
I didn't know what the Tonga flag looks like.
But
like, the flag, you see houses with just like all of these flags, and the flag is all red, and in one corner it's a white box with a red cross. And so I've seen this house with all these flags, and it kind of looks like a medic center. Like if you're on the battlefield, this is where you can get some help. It's so interesting, man. And it's just everywhere you go is these flags. I'm like, what is going on? So they won, they won the rugby. Is it the rugby league or union?
I think it was union. It's not even on the news. It's just that level of like non.
That's a sad shame.
Yeah, I know. It's quite pathetic. Anyway, it should be the first thing that comes up as soon as I open up the news. So
what else?
ABC, get your shit together.
There was the World Cup, Australia versus Honduras.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. That's not that
great. Why isn't it great?
No, the only reason I bring that up is because that's like the World Cup is the one sports event where I've got like something to contribute. Because what happened is that I would have been around, God, what year would I have done? Around 2003 or whatever. Because with the Socceroos, there was this story, which people really believed, that Australia kept on not being able to get into the World Cup qualifiers because there was a curse on the team. And they really believed it. And it went back to years before they were playing then Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, but they were playing the match in Mozambique, and the Socceroos asked for the help of a local witch doctor, but then they didn't pay the witch doctor, so then there was a curse, and there was this real belief, even like up at the high levels, that the Australian team is cursed. So then I went back to...
I feel like there are a lot of football cursing. That's the thing. That's a phenomenon. It was big, I think, in the 90s.
Very superstitious.
Yeah.
In sport. Yeah.
So one of my documentaries, I went back to Mozambique to like the grounds where they, Australia committed this sin of not paying the witch doctor. And I got some new like local witch doctors to like, and I did a ceremony with them where... and we sacrificed a chicken and there was all this stuff and smoke and stuff, and to try to get rid of the curse. And then the next World Cup qualifiers, Australia got in. They made it like for the first time in like decades or forever, really. And I'd forgotten about that I'd done this thing, but everyone remembered. And it was like, my email was blowing up. Like, well, my God, it worked. You broke the curse. And now every time there's a World Cup qualifier, If it goes well, like my Twitter just blows up with people like Australia hasn't missed the final since John Safran and Johnny Warren sacrificed a chicken in Mozambique. So this was like when Australia won against Honduras, and I just kind of...
So who's the superstitious one in that situation? Is it the witch doctors or the sports fanatics? It's just like, oh God, I hope it works. It's like at the I wouldn't say expense, but just like the humour of
How do you feel How do you feel about that happening?
Oh, I'm glad I did this story that somehow is caught in people's imagination and whatever, and sort of... I think there's a bit of playfulness about it where who knows? I don't know, but Australians are so obsessed with sports. They probably do. It's like, we're not really into religion, but they're so obsessed by sports that they're willing to kind of overrule it, and they probably actually do think like Australia's cursed or was cursed.
Yeah.
They transferred all that superstition from wherever it is it came from into just sports.
But I mean, a lot of sport players, like a lot of athletes, are superstitious.
Yeah,
they wear the same underwear every match, and they'll do crazy stuff like that. Like,
it's interesting. I play this game on PS4, FIFA, and there's a story now in 2017 one, where like you're a character and you go through this thing, and this is this kid, and his like dad has these shoes, and like you play these games and you go and you touch the shoe. Right? No, the character, he just does it. He touches the shoe. One of his teammates touches the shoe. Or like the ball. No, not a shoe, it was a ball.
Right.
Yeah. And one player looks at it and like doesn't, and then goes. And that game, like, it's you play, but it's very hard to win. So you always end up draw or like lose.
Oh, wow.
And then later on, there's a game where they all, like, one guy nearly stops, but he goes back and touches the ball. And then that game, like, you win. And that's like how the game ends. Like, so clearly reinforcing that, like, you gotta believe. Which, look, it's not so much about superstition, but it's about placebo in a sense of that, like, if you have that confidence that you think you're gonna win, you're gonna win, you play. So even if what's that scene in Harry Potter in one of the movies where Ron or like Harry like gets him like a liquid that has good luck in it and gives him great luck, and then Ron has to play the game Quidditch or whatever, and he's a goalkeeper and he's like heaps nervous, and then at some point in this like very important game, he has the drink and he thinks he has like the best luck, and he just smashes it. And later on, Harry's like, I just gave him some water. Like, it was all in, and that's the message of that. And again, that's reinforcing. I like that because that kind of clarifies at least to an extent that it's really just in your head. It's not really about what you do. It's more about feeling that you're sure and like kind of seeing how it's going to happen, really like, because you're so confident in it, you look with a bit more clarity. These are all the things that can go wrong. This is how they can be dealt with. This is how I deal with the situation. Because I have experience in this. I'm confident in my experience, as opposed to, can I do this or not?
But all the soccer players, they all touched it. They believe that everyone touched it except for the final guy. So they all would have played with the confidence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's about everyone has to believe as well.
So that one dude is the change in the game. Yeah. So what else is going on in the world?
There was a bunch of chaos with like citizenship. That was been going on from the last time we got together. The whole dual citizen thing.
Yeah,
that's even
that's
like
still
still going on. I don't want to call it heated, just sillier and whatever.
I was curious because this guy called Josh Frydenberg, one of the politicians, he suddenly got caught up in all of this, and
the environment dude, environment minister.
Well, it was. There's all these like weird things where you have. I think he was born in Australia, but his parents were born in Hungary, and then a couple of years ago, Hungary decided to allow the descendants of people born in Hungary to have citizenship because they think they're doing a good thing.
Right.
Like they're like, oh yeah, we did really bad things in the past, like we drove the Jews out, so let's do the right thing or whatever. But he had no idea about this, so accidentally he became a potential dual citizen.
Right.
So I was like going, is there anything like that in my family background? So I just did some real preliminary like research, and I asked my dad, and my dad's kind of obsessed with, not obsessed, but sort of interested in this type of thing. And it's really complicated. Like my dad's going, well, your grandmother on my side, she spent a bit of time in England after she was in Germany, and I don't know what that means. Did she become a citizen? What does that mean to you? And it is crazy, which is and really it's really hard to unpick. And kind of figure it out. Like I still don't know whether I could run for parliament if I wanted to.
Right, because they could dig this up.
Yes.
And you'd be like, oh, at least I have a dual citizen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it. Like most people, whereas over 60% of the population have a parent or they're from somewhere else, if not being born somewhere else themselves, like 60 or 70% of the population. Like that's ridiculous. Like most people, again, are likely to have some kind of dual citizen situation, because I don't think at any point was there a law where you had to renounce your citizenship. So like the whole population doesn't renounce their citizenship. So is that what, if you want to go into government, you then have to stop being like everyone else and just be this sole purebred Australian? Like
there was only a short period of time where if you wanted to become Australian citizen,
it's very royal. It's like it comes from that, it comes from the empire being like this thing where you're a British, you know what I mean? It's British rule. Yeah. It's, British Australian rule, where it comes from. It's not, people come from all over here and there's this government, there's a democracy, and we vote for whoever lives here and whoever pays their taxes and whoever does these things that make them a citizen. No, it's just like whoever is actually, coming from British rule, So it's like interesting, like you had to... It's really bizarre like that, because what does Australian mean? You have to be just an Australian citizen to be in parliament, to be prime minister.
I think they think it's because so you don't show dual loyalty. That's their logic.
Yeah.
Or whatever, but
because it's like a treaty thing, isn't it? It's like
I mean, like the idea of dual loyalty though, like
it's like you have a dad from there.
If you're living in one place, that's really where your loyalty is, because you're living there.
Yeah,
and if you had loyalty to somewhere else. If you really chose to be loyal to another place, you don't really need a citizenship.
Treason, that's what
I'm have for. That loyalty. Like,
is that like to make you treason proof? Is that the
I
logic?
think so.
Yeah,
but it is
make you treason proof.
But all these people from British backgrounds are getting caught up in it. Like I think like Jackie Lambie, she's British or something. Or,
she is. Yeah.
And so all these people with Scottish and Welsh, like they're all getting caught up in it too. I don't like understand.
English. Like, what do you expect people to do? Like, not be? I
mean, everyone's gonna.
And also, I think it's pretty expensive to renounce your citizenship,
isn't it?
Yeah, because Sam Dastieri, because he was born in Iran, so it was like really clear. Yeah. When he entered parliament, like he goes, I'm from Iran, and the law is you can't. So he did all the paperwork, and apparently it costs like $20,000 or something. So
wow,
that's ridiculous.
That's expensive.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to just have to renounce something that you shouldn't even really need to renounce. I guess, only if they're at war with the country. But even then, so what else is going on in the world? I feel like, Buckley, you had like a list of things you wanted to talk about. Or am I wrong? I could be wrong about that. But this week, I'm trying to remember what's been going down this week.
I mean, it's a pretty like ugly time in history, so it's kind of hard to not.
Is it because of an overload? Do you guys feel like there's always an overload?
It's not a matter of an overload.
On?
It's just a matter of like how we kind of perceive news, you know? Or if you think about, you know, let's just kind of ease into it bit by bit in how we perceive what's happening in the world in different parts of the world, right? So in Australia, we look at what's happening around us, or we're just like, oh, you know, it's just shit. Like, what can I do? It's hard. In other parts, people are seeing a lot worse, like on a regular basis. And it's just like, even that, there is a polarity where people are like, well, what can I do? But for the most part, there are great numbers of people who like really think to like a higher level, not a higher level, but they're used to thinking about this. And so they think above because they're dealing with it at the same time, you know? So these people who we read the news about, they're not just people who read about, they have people about themselves who read about them, you know? They don't just exist in chaos. Like, it's not like people who aren't us in Australia all exist in chaos. It's just us, America, first world, and everyone else is just miserable. No, they have their ranges as well, course, you know? And they think of them, look at themselves and evaluate themselves and progress in that sense because they do have the ability, and everyone else like us has the ability to self-manage. But like, we seem to think when we're comfortable, like we've earned it, like we're at this place where, you know, if you're not us, if you know you don't have this citizenship, if you're not this, you can't be a part of it because, you know, that's just not how lines work. These arbitrary lines that it's just empires, man. If you come back down to it, anyway,
it's not even lines. It's empires.
It's not. Yeah, it's not lines.
Yeah,
it's
because they've put lines in lands. And given it separate empires.
Yeah, given it separate empires, and like kind of maintain control in other forms while calling it.
So is it that idea of just being born into privilege? It's just like the only reason that you know, you're born in one country as opposed to being born in another country.
Yeah, it doesn't really come down to any of your actions. It's just like that moment in which you were born, that place, that situation. So this place and moment in which you're born, the situation that you're born into, is going to have a huge effect on the decisions and how you live your life and your worldview and how you kind of come to think about things. And you must, at some point, recognize, not you must, but like it's a bit great, you know, at least if someone had told me that there is that, like it's more than you think how much is actually, because you're like, oh, you know, I know some of this is just people influencing me. Like, I know I have my own thoughts. I know like life is just like based on what's around me to an extent, but like you don't really realize how much of it is actually just the constructions around you and the environment around you. And that's going to affect so much, but that does not stop you from really stepping like way out. Of course, and just be like, okay, where am I in comparison to where someone else can be? But without having to like, you know, live that experience, but having to like just look at it because like it's all there, it's all laid out to you. We're communicated people, we just communicate to each other. I'm like, this is our experience. And then you listen to someone, that's the experience, and you work together, you come to a space and you have a conversation and you figure out how you can help each other. It's kind of based on the realization that your understanding and your experience is as much real as someone else's. So when someone says, you know, this is what's happening because of this world that we're in, you listen like, of course it must be, because I know what it feels like for things to happen. Like my life is real and your life is real. It's not like I need to be in your shoes completely to understand what's going on. I just need to kind of listen and understand because I know how the greater context of things work. I've sat down and I've evaluated it. And I feel like there's a problem where people, you know, forget to realize that you never really had a choice in how or where you were born, and you didn't have a choice in those influences, and that's okay. But like, don't just like use that to be like, oh, you know, like I couldn't have done it otherwise. Like, is this how it is? It's like, realize that like you can now use that to do something with it, to do something healthy. Like, what can you take out of your you know, privilege per se, and use it to, you know, work with others who are like deserve that privilege? Because don't you just want to be happy just like everyone else? I don't think you need to be taught, you know, love thy neighbor. There's this natural inclination. And as much as I don't really like to say the word natural, just because I'm arguing here that most of it isn't, is that we do just want to be happy, and it's just easier to be happy when everyone around us is like giving us happiness, you know? So it's not like, you know, people are like, you know, in a very understanding and like mutual way are going to give us love that we're going to be like, no, I hate this. It's usually when life is like, you know, when people are telling you how you should be loved, and like, this is, I do this thing for you and it's because I love you. And straight away that builds a kind of tension as you're progressing through life. It's like, oh, you know, you're you're holding me down, you're not letting me be my true self, and you're telling me it's because you love me, and that becomes very difficult. So people question themselves and they don't know, like, what is true and what is not. Whereas what you need is the kind of environment and influences that let you, to an extent, just have space so you can explore and figure out what it is that's inside you and who you are and who your personality is. Because it's not very difficult to, gain the construct of like a personality or like your frame of thinking, the way you engage with people. But sometimes you need time to like meditate on it, as opposed to trying to like jump on board or being like bombarded to figure it out straight away. And that's just one element, but, more so to the fact that we have to, I don't know, just realize our place in it all. And as opposed to trying to shift or change, more so, work with it.
But that's something that you would be taught in and of itself.
I know everything needs to be taught. And I'm always just feeling like this thing where I've missed out so much. Why am I learning this now?
Yeah, but that's the whole point of like your existence.
That's why teachers are so valuable, and good teachers, like teachers that have been through like experiences, or like have life understanding to an extent. Because school smarts is great, but street smarts is helpful as well. And even if you don't have either of those, you have something. We all have something. Everyone has nothing and something. And some people have more nothing than others, So we got to look at that as well. You don't, so much.
What do you think you have, John? You street smarts, book smarts, nothing smarts?
No, there's some... what kind of smarts do I have? Well, I've got very limited street smarts.
Yeah.
You
didn't learn too much on the streets of Canberra? I meant Melbourne.
Streets of Melbourne.
Yeah.
Just sort of, how would I go in a fight? I don't know.
Perhaps you would just, talk your way out of it,
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely, well, that's what I have to do in my line of work, because like hanging out in these dangerous spots is you have to kind of work out what's safe and what's not safe, and kind of weasel around things.
Has your mouth ever put you in a compromising situation? Have you ever found yourself?
Absolutely. Generally, I probably am just. It probably is just a matter of time before I get a punch in the head. Or shot or something like that.
Why do you think that? What?
Well, like to give you for instance, I was hanging out with these far-right people for my book that I just did, and the whole time, it was like dangerous. Like these people are like neo-Nazis and I don't like Jews or whatever, but I just sort of went in there and just kind of...
Did they know you were Jewish?
Yeah. And I just kind of did my thing and I just kind of did it, and then I wrote the book or whatever, and I was like, that was fine or whatever. And then just last night, this... young woman her partner, he's doing some documentary with like the same kind of far-right people, and she was telling me and going, my boyfriend was saying, like, don't mention your name, or, as soon as, you mention my name to them, they get like furious or whatever. And so yes, I possibly did just avoid a punch to the face quite narrowly.
Do they feel you're exposing them? Is that
who knows?
Yeah.
It's not my fault.
Yeah,
I guess I am a bit of a smart ass, but still, you don't deserve to die just because you're a smart ass.
No, true. No one deserves to die because they're a smart ass. But
so that's the kind of smarts you have.
Yes.
In the experience of interacting with like far right, what was the most surprising thing for you?
Well, I guess I was interested in how they now negotiate that Australia is very different from where it was like 20, 30, 40 years ago. So, like last time Pauline Hanson was around, you could build your movement just around white Australians, but now they've managed to kind of like adjust to, Australia's more multicultural. How can we use this? Like, who can we allow into our far right movement and still be far right? And so you have evangelical Christian immigrants who don't like Islam and have their own backstory with Islam, and and so then they kind of hook up with the more conventional white Aussies who just have problems with the other.
Yeah.
And so you have this like strange bedfellows of where they provide
Hate
kind of
with
cover
hate.
for each other.
Yeah.
So the white nationalists get to go, well, we're not racist. We got these guys and they're brown and they're on our side. And then in this other way, for these evangelical Christians, like these non-white evangelical Christians who are immigrants, they like being with these white people because they think it helps make them seem more normal.
More white.
Yeah, but well, there is that. There's absolutely that what you say, but another layer to it is like Australia's like really sus on religion a bit, if you know what I mean. Like especially even things like just say if you're like an evangelical Christian who believes the Messiah is going to come and you believe in exorcisms or whatever, like the average sort of Aussie is just going to be like, whoa, that's weird or whatever. So I think they really like how they get to, if they hang around with these other people, it's sort of like almost like makes them look like they're not as strange. You know, it's like, oh, well, we're not strange. We're just hanging out with these other white people. And
of all groups of people to pick to make yourself not look strange,
exactly.
the racist, bigoted white people. Yeah, well, I mean, that is interesting. It tries to legitimize and justify their stance. But you see it, man, and you see it in all throughout history. What's the best word for it? I don't think an Uncle Tom is the right word for it. But you know, it's the traitors, man. Like the ones from a community that, in order to.
Have you ever seen the Boondocks?
I love the Boondocks.
Have you seen the Boondocks?
I'm aware of the cartoon, but I haven't.
You
really
have to see the Boondocks.
I feel like you might enjoy watching the Boondocks or like learn a couple of things. It's a very interesting show. It's just very
smart,
very not self-aware because that's just ridiculous, but just aware, like contextually informed, and not like. And the humor is decent. It's not like some South Park shit. We're like, oh, look at how like we know what's going on, and look at how like we say some ridiculous shit about it, and like we're so funny. Like no, like there's a quality in the writing there.
Yeah.
Not just two dudes having a chat, you know.
Yeah. So you're talking about Ruckus,
Uncle Ruckus,
who's a black guy who thinks he has revitiligo. He's actually white and turned black. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. People who like want to identify. With their oppressor, and you see it, man. And there are coaches who try to identify with their oppressor, and so I always find that interesting because those people, they could be themselves oppressed, you know.
Yeah, cool.
So
I mean, I guess it's about the relationship with the oppressor again. If we're going to be talking, like, you know,
Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome, precisely. Like, people like to think, oh, you know, we're free and we are who we are. It's like, are you though? Most of what you've been learned for the generation is that you are lesser than who you can be, and this is what's normal. Like, there's when there's a movie and there's black people in it, it's a black movie. When there's a movie with white people in it, it's a movie.
Just a movie. Yeah.
So it's not like I thought we were just people. You know what I mean? Like, why? Like, and not to take away from the fact that we are black people, we do have our culture and our place in society and our like own situation, and you respect that, and like that it is ours and there is yours. But you don't. At the same time say, no, we respect you for your merit, who you are, and it's really like you're just kind of placing us in a situation like, oh, we've fit you here, we've filled the quota, we've, you know, sorted out the situation. It's like you're, you know, it's not like, you know, the heteronormative white supremacist patriarchy hasn't changed. It's still the same thing, just like you are now been shifted around to feel like you're more you know, a part of it now. You know, we need black judges, you know, we need black, you know, all that kind of thing, you know, like it has to be widespread. It has to be to the statistics of the numbers of the people, but it's irrelevant of the statistics anyway, because the fundamental of it is that it comes down to the, you know, our interactions and our ability to get through life. And there are some, you know, very strong differences there in how people like the steps and the doors and the, you know,
well, opportunity is of course a thing.
An opportunity, and that does, again, it doesn't come down to your trait and who you are as a person, your experience. It comes down to where you fell in when that, you know, when that baby came out in that time and where you were. Like you didn't sign up, you didn't write, I wanted to be, you know, but we forget that. We're just like, oh, you know, I've been through this, it's all about me. It's not all about us.
We're in the industry here, like in the film industry for a very long time, and in TV, like it didn't really have a reflection of that multicultural essence.
Yeah.
And like a lot of shows didn't do well in England because it seemed like they were like racist because they didn't really have a mix. People in England were aware enough to know that Australia has, you know, a lot of different people. And so in England, like they have quite a mix, you know, they have a large Asian, like South Asian population amongst many other populations as well. So, it's the film and TV is more diverse, and that's the thing. Like even as an actor who looks the way I look as a Middle Eastern man, to be on mainstream TV was like absurd for up until like something like Underbelly. And now what does Underbelly portray? So the only role I can play on TV mainstream is that of a hitman and a gangster and a drug dealer, and perfect, you know.
It's weird how when it comes to Aboriginal Australians, it hasn't even reached the level of tokenism in their representation on TV. So if you go to America and you watch ads, they'll just have Black Americans in ads. And it's...
I mean, that's probably that's fantastic because tokenism is like very destructive because tokenism allows, again, for further like making a novelty out of it, you know, because there's thing with tokenism is there's tokenism, there's sexualization, and there's all these other things because again with sports, like if you start to like over idealize like black people for their, you know, athletic ability, is that coming from your genuine belief in their athletic ability or in the fact they can be like, oh, look at them, they're athletes, you know, like look at them, they're sex machines,
they become one-dimensional.
Yeah, they become, well, even if they're multi-dimensional, they're for your
but the
leisure, you know what I mean?
But kind of what I'm saying is when if there was an ad break and there was an Aboriginal face, it would seem like they're trying to make a point or it's a provocation of some sort, or
there was the lamb ad.
When
I guess,
should just be that should be
represented.
and
it becomes really weird with Aboriginal Australians because you'd say in a McDonald's ad they could have Black Americans in it, or probably even like Black Australians in it who weren't Aboriginal, and that would seem just whatever. But things with Aboriginal things just seem really
I mean you're right to a fact they're not like Indigenous, you know, actors and, you know, performers
they're not really represented
or represented just like, you know, as regular people in society. They're always the other. They're always like, oh, look how victimized they are, or look, you know, how whatever the situation is. Like there is, you know,
they're not just playing characters.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just characters. There is media that, you know, is led and like run by like people from Indigenous, Aboriginal, or Torres Strait Islander communities such as NITV, and like online spaces. You know, there's a lot of websites. So there is like dialogue and representation. All that, it's nowhere near enough. Of course, as usual is the case with these kind of things. But yeah, I don't think we should be going towards the kind of, like, as you said, like tokenistic trend, because it has to maintain that there is we're still like inherently at war. So it's not like we're gonna be like, oh, you know, we're all one. Like, no, like there's a vision. We have not like recognized people as their own nation of people. If we're going to go by our own laws that people are sovereign, these are the sovereign people in which you're ruling over. So we're breaking our own laws that we've like laid down, you know? So there's always that. So it's, you never really want it to get to the point where it's just like they're just part of like mainstream culture in that sense, because it's not that I so much want to point out that they're other, because they're human just as much as everyone else. It's just more that they're their own sovereign people. And so I don't want to just include them in that sense. I want to like recognize that their culture has to grow alongside mine, and mine is growing at a much faster rate than like it's not that there's a flourishing, you know, there are flourishing cultures, but unfortunately it's a dominant one that's kind of maintaining the control all the time. And that's why I guess it makes one a hipster or whatnot, but you got to be whatever it can, is looking where you can break down the parts of the dominant culture that reinforce like power dominations. You know what I mean? Not just, you know, ideas. It's more about what ideas maintain power over people, you know, or people's oppression or people's poverty. Because we're like, oh, we hate poverty, we want to help the poor, but we can't just keep, you know, living a life that allows them to continue to be poor. And yeah, I know there's no such thing as like completely ethical consumption, but we don't just like do things for our own amusement or life and then just say, oh, you know, that's just my contribution. Like I think there's a growing like movement now when it comes to lots of forms of art where it's solution based. Where I was talking to an actor the other day, and they're like, you know, a lot of my work now I try to see, and a photographer where they can see, they make relationships with the situation they're talking about with people and come to an understanding on like how people can, you know, self-empower, self-determine like, you know, propel their place, and that requires a sacrifice, not so much as a additional, you know, like, oh, I will use what I have to like give you like your solutions and how to make you like my success, because my success, no, your success is made for you depending on who you are. Your success is not made for everyone. Some people, for them, their way of happiness and their approach to success in life is different. You have to respect that, and you have to let them achieve that, as opposed to like saying, "Hi, this is how you be like me," or "This is how I'm going to achieve it for you." You know. So there's a lot of this like culture. We're trying to help each other, but we're not letting each other help ourselves. We're just like, I know what's right, but
So
you only know
people
what's right because you've been reinforced that
intention.
that's right all the time, because what is right is actually what's wrong. You know what I mean? What's mainstream is what's wrong. So if you're going to be told that it's right your whole life, it means you haven't been challenged. We're trying to work with people who the whole life have been challenged and told that like their place is not wanted and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that. I think we're gonna roll it up right about now. Thank you for being with us for episode 7 of the Extreme Podcast, John Safran.
No, thank you. Lots of fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Episode 7, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you, John. I know you have a flight to catch, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Back to
Busy man, running around.
Moving around.
Yeah, well, it's good to just take a moment out, you know what I mean? So much love. Peace and blessings to everybody out there. May your day be filled with calmness and contentment. And whenever this reaches you, may it reach you in the best of health. Peace, 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 peace.